This is Clive to Carle with another episode of The Health Revolution, and today I'm very, very pleased to be joined by Paige, who's just come out with a book that a lot of people have been waiting for, which is called Food for Consciousness. And welcome, Holly.
Thank you, Clive.
This
is the first interview that I've done about this book, and I actually got the print copies arrived at my home about 2 hours ago. I'm really excited.
Well, it's nice to give the news fresh, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you got the copy of the book in front of you?
Yes.
Yeah,
you have to tell me if you can see it.
Food for Consciousness, getting back on track of our true potential.
Yeah.
Peak potential. So true peak potential.
Peak potential.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of implication in there, and the implication is that there's a lot more for us than we're currently registering. Our true peak potential is way higher than how we're living now, and we can move towards it quite rapidly.
Well, quite. So, for those who don't know you, what's the core of the book?
The core of the book, well, I'll say two things about that. One in terms of the problem, and one's in terms of the solution. So I'm going to start with the solution because I think that's where we really need to go now. Solution I've presented in three parts. So we're talking about nutrition and the physical side. And then then the second bit is about the way we use our minds. And the third bit is about connection, and particularly about our connection to the earth and nature, but also to each other and between the genders, because there's something very weird happened there. So that's the solution, three-part solution. And the problem, the gist there is that since we left our natural biological habitat, because we're animals, we're very sophisticated animals, but nonetheless we are biological animals. Since we left our natural biological habitat, the tropical forest, millennia ago, we're in a different chemical state. We're taking in different chemistry because we're eating differently and we're surrounded by different chemistry. And that's quite obvious. But the thing to be aware of is that the way we're built is not just to do with our DNA, it's the way that the DNA is read. And this is the basis of the science of epigenetics. So with the same DNA that we had, say, 200,000 years ago, we're being built quite differently. Obviously go into this in much more detail in the book, but there's a lot of effects of this, and to our neural system, digestive system, immune system, and reproductive system. But the big thing to be very aware of is it's affected the way the brain is built. So now we have a split brain. So we have a right hemisphere and left hemisphere that seem to be doing different things, and we actually have a split sense of self. And to us, this is so normal. We're so used to this that we think of it as normal, but it explains a lot of the craziness and weirdness of the world. And this is well documented. And what's happened, I think people, how things are found out in science, things are looked at in science, and it takes decades for it to become well known in the public domain. Well, what's known in the public domain right now is mostly based on the work of Roger Sperry in the 1960s. But a lot has happened since then. And there's been work in the 1980s and the 1990s, and the stuff's still happening now, which shows that it's a lot more to it than the right hemisphere being artistic and the left hemisphere being logical. There's a lot more to it than that. It's very, very amazing. I mean, I live for this stuff, and it's like, because it shows we do have the potential to live in this ongoing sense of ecstatic connection, and we might not be able to achieve it all today, but even in one day you can actually make a lot of progress. In 1 hour you can make a lot of progress. Over a few generations, we could be in a state that that now we think of, we can only dream of, really. And this is very real. It's not some sort of new agey woo woo thing. It's grounded in science. The basis of the research on the brain and its link to nutrition is all documented in a book called Return to the Brain of Eden by Tony Wright. I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yes, I've read it, yes.
Yeah.
I've interviewed Tony, actually.
Sorry?
I've actually done an interview with Tony.
Wow. So, when I found his work, I felt like I found what I was looking for. I found the answers I was looking for. And that was, it's probably about 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. And he doesn't want to teach people about nutrition because he's got to prioritize his time, And I've always had his blessing to go ahead and teach about the nutrition that is appropriate for humans based on the situation we know we're in. And I actually spent a lot of time with him. I stayed at his house for prolonged periods with his family and spent hours and hours and hours talking to him on the phone because I discovered him, before he even wrote his first book, because I was searching, what is it with humans? What's going on? I wanted to know, and I knew it was something to do with the brain, so, and I eventually found him. So I was lucky enough to have a lot of time with him. And he became a friend, but, it's because I was looking for his research. So, I've made it my mission now. One of the things I do is to teach about nutrition to rebuild our neural system. And the thing is, we were talking earlier, when we were chatting about thinking mechanically. So for me, it's all mechanical. So it's like, and how do we feel and how do things make us feel? So, our neural system is, after water, is composed mainly of fat, and we need to get undamaged fatty acids. So, it's natural for us to eat. Once you heat things above 40 degrees, living things, food, you changed its chemical structure. And we need undamaged fatty acids to build our neural systems, and we need undamaged amino acids. They're the constituents of protein to build healthy neurotransmitters, because most of our neurotransmitters are made from amino acids, and hardly anyone ever tells us that. It took me about 3 days to work that out years ago. Nobody actually tells you that straight, do they?
Amino acids are incredible. I had a client in the summer who explained to me that he hadn't eaten food for 20 years. He wasn't a breatharian, he was an alcoholic. And when he came to me, he looked like he was going to die. He was just skin and bones, nothing, no muscle, no nothing. And I put him on 10 amino acids 3 times a day of the essential aminos. And he told me the next day that when he got home in the evening, he poured himself a glass of wine, which was his norm to do, and he couldn't face drinking it.
Really?
Yeah.
And the neurotransmitters will start to be made properly again.
Well, exactly, but how fast is that? I mean, since then I've been looking into intravenous amino acid therapy, which is getting people off heroin, crack, every addiction, because you can actually reset the dopamine receptors. So 30% of us are born with less dopamine receptors than we ought to have.
Right,
they reckon
that
it's
makes sense.
About 70%. So about 30% of us have an addictive personality.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
The work that they've been doing with intravenous amino acids is literally changing the brain right away, so that now we're producing 100% amino acids. 100% dopamine. It's incredible.
Yeah. I totally, that's totally believable from what I've looked into. Yeah, and that's is an example of we can do things so fast. We can start to feel different in one day, and then we can just take it from there. It's just knowing what to do.
Yes, exactly.
Ibogaine is something that I looked into as well, for resetting our biochemistry in terms of specifically in terms of ancestral trauma that. Generation after generation can be living the same ancestral trauma, something that happened hundreds and hundreds of years ago, simply because we get addicted to our own biochemistry. So if something happens that's traumatic, it's like we can only function in the biochemistry that's produced by that trauma after a while, if it's persistent. And we will recreate that for our children because we're living in we continue doing things to create that emotional state, and so it gets passed on from generation to generation. And ibogaine will reset all that. I mean, it's becoming known. Ibogaine's becoming known as an addiction interrupter, but it's also it interrupts our emotional addictions as well. Similar, it sounds very similar thing, because what it will do is reset the chemistry, which you can do by a much more direct method as well, as you were describing with the amino acids.
I tried iboga about 13 years ago, and it was extraordinary. Have you tried it?
I have, yeah.
And
Yeah.
did you have a long experience?
No, for me, I've just done it microdosing.
Well, microdosing is the way to do it, I think, or one of the.
Yeah.
I tried a megadose,
Yeah.
and I'd done lots of research. I'd been to conferences about it, and I was very interested in it. And I realised I sent off to Africa to get the root, and I took the bark off, did it all properly, right? And about 20 minutes after I'd taken it, I'd realised I'd probably taken rather too much, because I could hear not only people whispering in other rooms, but I could hear everybody having conversations in all the houses around me.
Oh my goodness.
It was really extraordinary. And it went on for 3.5 days. And on the last day, or the last 18 hours, I relived every mistake I'd ever made. I relived at super speed, really fast, every single thing in my life. Every time I'd thought a nasty thought, every time I'd dropped a piece of litter, every time I'd been nasty to somebody, I had a total whole life review. And actually, it was very, very depressing. Most people come out of Iboga feeling wonderful, and I came out feeling awful.
I have heard of that, actually, yeah.
But I gave some to...
Better long term?
I'm sorry?
Did you feel better long term for going through that experience?
I think after about 3 years, I felt pleased that I'd done it. It was it was harsh, the harshest thing I've ever done. And but had I taken less, I think it would have been blissful, possibly. But
I'm not. I would love at some point to take a larger dose. It's just I feel like I need the right circumstances, because I'd like it. I prefer to be supervised, and because of the slight risks about it, aren't there?
No, you have to be supervised. I had 2 people with me night and day.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, one for the day and one for the night, sort of thing. It's essential.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But I was at that point looking at starting an addiction cessation clinic, and in the course of deciding whether I should do it, I treated people. One person I gave it to, and of course it was legal then. One person I gave it to was a heroin addict, and he was clearly having quite a time with the Iboga. And after 8 hours, he did what I couldn't have done. He just got up, and he said it stopped.
Wow.
That's weird. And he refused to explain anything. We asked, well, what happened? He just wouldn't talk about it, and almost immediately got in his car and drove off, which, again, for me, that would have been impossible for days.
Yeah.
Anyway, I met him a year later, and he said, oh, I'm ready to tell you now what happened. He said that when I was 7, my father died, and I never got over it, he said. Then he said, when I was 20, I was driving the car, I crashed it and killed my girlfriend. And he said that I knew, he said that my issue, the reason I was a heroin addict, was related to death. And he said that the plant gave him, whether he had his eyes open or closed, a skull. He could see nothing in his vision except the skull. And the plant, he realised that the plant was saying, now is the time to deal with your death issue. He decided he'd rather carry on with the heroin, and the plant turned off just like that.
Wow.
He wasn't ready.
Wow.
But in the right dose, in the right setting, at the right time, with the right people, with nothing to disturb you, it's very incredible. But it's more than one can describe. I mean, the first
completely. Even the microdosing is super powerful.
Yeah. So there are wonderful plants out there. Sorry, I interrupted you.
But this is part of the sorry to interrupt you. I interrupted you, I think. But this is one of the strands that goes through the book, is that getting back to our original biological habitat, we're designed to run in this kind of chemical mix in our bodies. It's not just our own chemicals, but the plant chemistry. And this chemistry is very, very powerful. So we're aware of powerful psychoactive plants like ayahuasca and iboga and so forth. But actually, all plant chemistry is very powerful. And actually, as you get cleaner and you eat cleaner and you live a sort of clearer life, you become very aware of that. When you use herbs or even fruit is powerfully psychoactive. And so we're not really designed just to live on our own hormones. We're designed to live in this complex mix. And add to that is our own pineal hormones. And right now our pineals aren't pumping the levels of hormones that they potentially could be or did originally. For example, they're designed to pump a lot more melatonin than they currently do, and tiny amounts of DMT, and also monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which are chemicals that keep neurotransmitter levels high. So that's how we're designed to run. So it's not surprising now that people reach out to quote drugs, because we know there's something missing. Does that make sense?
Well, very much so. You know, as we were discussing before this started, 30% of people are low on dopamine.
Yeah, exactly. And my feeling is probably that is a sort of an underestimate in terms of that we're probably all short of a lot of things, but we're just talking about 30% are so low that it's a kind of a big problem for them. But we're all short of practically everything, you know, and so, you know, for example, an interesting figure comes from Catherine Milton. She's a primatologist, and looking at what wild primates eat and reckoning that they get 50 times the micronutrients than a human in civilization, you know, because just from foraging, you know, just simple foraging, and their neural systems aren't nearly as complex as ours. So really, everybody is in a state of malnutrition. You know, we talk about world hunger, but that's what world hunger is. It's not just people are actually starving. Is all humans are malnourished, or nearly all. I mean, I'm sure a few people have really got what they need. It's possible, but the vast majority of people are extremely malnourished. And, you know, even this is a cause of obesity, because people are trying to eat to sort of get the nutrition, and it's empty. I mean, you know all this stuff anyway, Clive, don't you?
Exactly, and I mean, you know, stress, they always say, is the big killer, and I now understand why, because the moment you get stressed, you start burning up more nutrients.
Yeah, and neural tissue gets damaged and so forth. So, and we're under phenomenal stress, and it's just become normalized. You know, and people, I mean, I'm sure you get this, but people tell me, you know, people confide things in me, and you know, everybody will tell you their own personal story and confidence about really how anxious they are, and it's nearly everybody I know. And the only way you'd not feel anxious in what we set up is if you really kind of found a way to be oblivious to it, I guess, one way or another, because we're not designed to live in we're designed to live in a living environment, you know, and electrically, we're talking about electrically as well, you know, that we're designed to live flooded with negative ions, with electrons around us. And we've created these situations where that isn't the case. So, you know, I talk a lot about that in the book as well, about the importance of earth connection, because if, you know, the earth is electrical, and, you know, for most of human existence, we've lived electrically connected to the earth. So, you know, it's becoming well known now that if you start to get earthed, i.e. you walk a lot barefoot, or you, for example, I'm sitting now on, I didn't bring it through. My earth, you know, I sit on an earthing mat generally when I'm working. And so keep an electrical connection to the earth. So, you know, do it various ways with earthing sheets, earthing mats, walking barefoot, and so forth. But if you, if we're designed to be electrically connected to the earth, which clearly we are, if you take that away, it's not just going to affect our physical health, which is well known now, but it's bound to affect the way we think, because our neural systems are electrical. So it just stands to reason. So now I'm missing my earthing mat. I left it in the other room. But it's going to affect the way we think about what we want, and our confidence to go about getting what we want, and our ability to be harmonious with other people. I mean, one of the direct chemical effects of being earthed is it increases melatonin levels. And melatonin is something that's already short in us. And if you dose people with melatonin, they generally, I mean, I've done this experiment myself with groups of people. The group will become more harmonious, or the family will become more harmonious. People's desires become more harmonious because they're more natural and healthy. Because I strongly believe that, you know, our true desires are healthy. You know, we're meant to live by desire, you know, and we've all been told, oh no, you must sacrifice yourself. And because it's a whole culture, our culture is built on this problem, you know, this glitch that our DNA isn't read right, and we've got this split brain. And we've developed these whole cultures all over the world based on this problem. So it's produced cultural conditioning, and some cultural conditioning is more unpleasant than others. But at the very least, I think most of us have got this guilt thing in our heads that we're not really supposed to have what we want, and it's seen as a problem. But I think that, you know, we are here to have what we want. We need our desires to become healthy and true, i.e. our desires become for things that will truly make us happy and at the same time create happiness for other people. And I think our connection to the earth and nature is crucial to do that. I don't think we can do that without the connection to nature.
Yes, I agree. Did you hear about the research with melatonin in blind women?
No, I didn't.
It turns out that blind women, the research wasn't done on men, it was only done on women, who just see blackness, don't get cancer. Which is, if you like, proof that melatonin is anti-cancer. I'm not saying every blind woman. Yeah, but it was quite big.
I know it's massively anti-aging. I'm really convinced of that as well. It changes the way the DNA is read, and this is something Tony talks about. I mean, he can't cover everything in that book. You know, that book, Return to the Brain of Eden, it can only ever be a summary. You know what I mean? Because there's so much of it. But the thing is about melatonin. This might be in the book actually. The large amounts of melatonin that our pineal gland ideally would be pumping out. That is one of the major players in terms of the way our DNA is read. And as we age, as we know, we produce less melatonin. So if you start supplementing with melatonin, which might seem a bit weird, but I know it is anti-aging. You know, I know that from my own experience and other people's experience. And, you know, people say, well, it's a bit, you know, won't that mean that our pineal glands will produce less? But the thing is, we're so chronically short already. This is the thing with supplementation. If you realize the situation we're in, you know, for example, it may be, who knows, it may be that originally we could produce our own vitamin C, but I'm not going to not have, you know, I get vitamin C from lots of fruits, for example, but I'm not going to limit my intake of vitamin C containing fruits because ideally I'd be able to make my own possibly. You know, or vitamin D, we're supposed to get it from the sunshine. Well, if there is no sunshine, as there is, you know, 6 months of the year in Britain, you cannot make your own vitamin D from the sun. You best to supplement, really. We're in survival mode. We're not in the golden age. You know, I think when you accept that we've got a problem and we have to deal with it and we're working to solve this problem, you actually can feel happier than if you're expecting everything to be perfect. And just realize you're just in action mode. We're doing something about it. But I think people get very miserable with, you know, there's two types of positive thinking. One is saying, oh, everything's perfect. And the other is saying, well, actually, there are problems. A lot of life is good, but there are problems and we have solutions.
There are lots of solutions out there, and clearly your book is full of them. Tell us a little bit about the solutions. Should we start with food, perhaps?
Yeah.
Just before we start on food, I heard something really weird today from a geneticist who said that men's DNA is more similar to chimpanzees than it is to women's.
I don't know about that.
No, I don't know about that either, but he's a very respected geneticist. He might just be right. I mean, the bananas have got about 20,000 more genes than we have.
Yeah, I do have, you know, to get it in perspective, I've always understood that our DNA isn't that different to a banana, so I don't know what to make of that.
I think well, exactly. It's
lots to do with the way the DNA is read, though, and I think that's the thing, you know, we've got the DNA and we've got the way that the DNA is read, and they're two different things, you know. And that's what I'm kind of focused on. There's not much, you know, I've got a feeling that there's not that much wrong with our DNA right now. But, you know, I mean, I know that, you know, we're getting mutations now due to radioactivity, you know, and you see that. But for the most part, I think the issue is the way our DNA is read. And in fact, this situation with the way the DNA is read has made men and women more different from each other. It's exaggerated the differences between men and women because it's to do with the way the testosterone works, because there's nothing wrong with testosterone and there's nothing wrong with sex hormones. They're great, but they weren't really designed to be running we're not really well, at the moment we're running on our sex hormones primarily, whereas ideally, optimally, we would have this mixture of our own hormones plus all this plant chemistry plus abundant pineal hormones, and that's quite different. And because there'd be so much more shared biochemistry between men and women, the differences would seem less great. So the problem with the testosterone, because men having more testosterone, is that when it's acting unmodulated by plant chemistry and pineal chemistry, it has an effect on the way the DNA is read, and it means that men's left hemispheres are more affected than women's left hemispheres. Do you remember Tony talking about this in Return to Brain of Eden? Yes, it's made the differences more exaggerated. And that does make sense to me from experience, looking at groups of people who've gone back to eating a lot more plant food and done things to change the way, to put back in some of the pineal chemistry. You can see that male and female getting a bit more harmonious. There's still big differences, but I think the idea is that originally we'd all be a lot more sensitive, and the difference in sensitivity between men and women wouldn't be as big as it is now, if at all different. More like being just being in late puberty or something. You know how children in late puberty, they're already very, very competent in many ways, but they're not aging, and we take it for granted that we're aging at this accelerated rate. But that's not inevitable. It clearly isn't inevitable. Something happens at puberty, this chemical change that sort of sets this aging process off. When you start thinking about these things, there's a lot of stuff we take for granted.
Exactly. And bringing you back just briefly to the pineal gland, of course, another factor is because almost everybody's low on magnesium because they're not eating enough plants. They're calcifying their pineal gland.
Yeah. Magnesium is when I started supplementing, I always ate a lot of plant food, but I still think, from what I know, even though my diet would look amazing compared to a lot of people's, I know it's still deficient because I'm not living in a forest, so I can't be foraging wherever I want. There's certain financial limitations. I think some of the times I've really felt completely amazing, eating a lot of blended plant material and fruit and so forth. That's been spending £200 a week, working with clients where they want to do that, and I'm doing that with them. And you feel really, really amazing. You still know that that's not even completely it. So we're trying to, I'm very much in favour of being aware of the circumstances that we're in and aware that we all have financial limitations. And we're living in a country where the kind of foods that are natural for humans to eat don't grow. In Britain, we don't even, we can't even produce our own food, whatever we're eating, it's mostly exported. So we're dealing with certain constraints. And this is something I bear in mind in the book. It's not, although I'm very idealistic, I'm very aware of where we are now and what we can actually do practically. And I've implemented this diet for years and years when I was living as a single mum on a very, very basic income, and I was aware at the time it's great because this shows you can do it if you prioritize it. There are ways around it. And, I'm all in favour of doing what you can. If you can't get the best quality, organic berries, well, if you have to pick them up in the supermarket cheaper, well, just do what you can, because it's all a step in the right direction. And the more you get energized and the more you get more functioning, the happier you get and the better use you can make of your time. You can progress, and you can find maybe ways then you can make more money, or you can do, it's always just make a step, start off with a small step if necessary, because it's all going the right direction.
So what should people eat for breakfast?
Oh, what should be? Well, there's the obvious thing. The first thing is probably best not to eat heavy things first in the first thing in the day, because that's when the body's in its natural cleansing cycle. So some people like to start with vegetable juices. Personally, and I know a lot of people feel the same, I prefer sweet fruity things. So like a fruit or berry smoothie. or one of my favourites, a really substantial breakfast, is the chocolate pudding, which I was telling you about, and that's based on a recipe by Tony Wright. That's one of his little secrets, is he's really good at making food. But and it's made with hemp milk, so that's hemp seeds soaked and blended and strained, so you've got this delicious milk. You can make it with orange juice as well, it's even nicer. And then blended with soaked seeds like sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, banana. Figs are one of the best foods of humans. Yeah, primates in the wild will seek out figs above any other fruit. They've got lots of amazing chemistry in them. And then I add strawberries to it, like frozen strawberries in the winter. And what else do I have? Coconut oil. And superfoods like maybe maca or mesquite, or I like purple corn or hemp leaf powder, whatever you feel, and cocoa powder or raw chocolate powder. And it makes this amazingly delicious chocolate pudding. It keeps you going all day. But the thing is, it's got practically everything that a human needs. You've got all the fatty acids in there, the amino acids, and the fruit compounds in there. So that's my favourite staple recipe. And it sounds quite heavy, and when I first started eating that, I thought, if I keep eating this, I'm going to get so fat. But it doesn't work like that, because it satisfies you at every level, and just gives you energy all day. So that's my recommended breakfast. But if you want something lighter, something like a fruit smoothie, or if you want something lighter still, vegetable juice. Some people don't really like they don't really like to have a lot of sweet things. And for me, I feel like I think it's quite natural for humans to eat a lot of fruit, but we've come a long way since our biological origins, and people experience that in different ways. So there's a lot of people have to adapt this for them as individuals.
And what about between breakfast and lunch, a mid-morning snack? What's good there?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm a big fan of blended food, really. So, I just think all sorts of fruit smoothies and vegetable juices and nut milks and seed milks are great, because you give you loads of nutrition without using a lot of energy and digestion. Because this is another thing that's happened to us, is because we're not built according to our original blueprint. Our digestive systems aren't as efficient, so it's harder work for us to break things down. So this is where the blender comes in. It's helping us. But then, all sorts of things you can be eating. I mean, I sometimes like to have, kefir is a really great thing as a pick me up, because it contains a lot of tryptophan, and that's an amino acid we can easily be short of, because it's a big molecule, and the other amino acids get across our digestive systems a bit more easily. And so I like to have kefir with noni powder, actually, sun-dried noni powder, because noni helps enlarge the pores of the gut, so that tryptophan can get through. So you really feel that, like kefir with either just noni powder sprinkled on it, or like, for example, you could have berries and some sort of dried fruit like mango or coconut juice and some noni powder blended into that, and pour that over the kefir, and you really feel that, like you really feel that sort of wow. The natural high.
The noni that I haven't tried the powder. I've just tried drinking the juice, which I thought was one of the most disgusting tasting things on the planet. Can you taste the noni powder in your mix? Or
this is one of the things about the book. There's about 140 recipes in. Some of them are a bit variations on each other. So, but there's a lot of recipes in there. And what I've done is taken all the ideal foods for humans to eat and make them into all really, really delicious recipes. And they're all simple as well. So just little simple techniques. For example, if you put a little bit of noni powder, I like the noni powder because it's sun-dried and it's raw. Whereas if you buy it in a bottle, often it's pasteurized and very expensive. But then this is very practical. For me, this is very, very practical. This is very real. I've done this with a family, limited income, all sorts of situations. So it's very doable. Noni powder, you can get raw and sun-dried, and it's also a very economical way of getting it. And you put about a teaspoon in a mixture of berries and, say, dried fruit or coconut juice and that kind of thing. It just enhances the flavour. It doesn't taste horrible at all. And I've made this for so many people, and all like, wow, this is nice.
Oh, that's good. How much noni powder would you put in?
for about a teaspoonful.
Okay.
And that's equivalent to a lot of noni juice. And you know how beneficial noni is, don't you? You know all about that. And it can even help with addictions because there's zeaxanthin in it. So we tend to be lacking in zeaxanthin, and we get that. Sometimes we can get that from, for example, I've forgotten all the substances it's in, but a lot of the what do you call it? I forgot the name for the really addictive substances, but a lot of addictive substances are attractive because they've got zeaxanthin in them, and we can get that from noni instead.
Oh, that's very interesting.
I wrote a little article about it. I'll send it to you.
And with the kefir, are you talking milk kefir or water kefir?
Obviously you can do either. I like milk kefir myself because I think there's more. Because I get on with it, and I feel there's a lot of nutrition in it that we need. Like, you're obviously going to get the nutrition that would be in the milk, but it's broken down by the kefir organisms, so that the casein is broken down, the lactose is broken down, and it produces a lot of B vitamins as well. So it's like a B vitamin factory. Plus, you're getting the A and the D that are in the milk to start with. Plus, it creates a lot. It changes the amino acid balance in the milk to be suitable for humans. When you think about the kefir culture and where it came about, it just really expands your thinking about where we all came from and the magic of it all, really, because there's no real explanation for it. This amazing organism that turns another mammal's milk into something that's a really ideal human food.
Yeah, I love kefir. I like the water kefir more.
Yeah, to be honest, recently I've got more into coconut kefir and water kefir. So I'll just, how it is, you'll say something that you're really into and it can go on for years and go have a phase and go on for years. And suddenly I'm actually only drinking coconut kefir and water kefir. But that's a recent thing. I don't know why. So that's suddenly what I want to do right now. Yeah, my 15-year-old daughter has committed to being totally vegan. And I think she influences me. You can't help it. The people you're around affect the way you feel and what you want to do.
So let's talk about being vegan for a moment, because some people seem to absolutely thrive on it.
Yeah.
And others clearly fall apart.
Yeah, definitely.
What's your feeling about it? Is it natural?
Well, the thing is, if in our natural environment, eating a plant-based diet, I think a plant-based diet is totally natural to us. The thing is, you're doing it in the wild is a bit different to doing it in a supermarket. Because you're doing it in the wild, you're getting all those bits of soil and bits of grubs. And, like even, for example, a fig, wasps go and nest in there, right? And they leave all various material behind. And this is rich protein, fatty material that gets left behind by insects in fruit. We're not generally eating fruit like that from a supermarket. So wild fruit is very different. We're very involved with insects. I think insects are part of our diet. So, I'm nothing against, I think that if you choose to become a vegan now, you just have to think it through. And, I've done failed vegan experiments in the past. I think I got quite well known for it because I sort of blew the whistle a bit on raw veganism because I could see the damage it was doing to people, especially women and children. But, and I was like when I was writing the book, I was going to just basically, my thing was going to be just don't be vegan. But, how we're talking about how your children, teach you stuff. Well, my youngest child, my daughter, who was part of my failed vegan experiment when she was very little, actually has come full circle and decided, like a lot of girls her age group, to be vegan for ethical reasons, her concern for animals. And she's actually making it work now. But I'm more educated now. And, I think what I'm really missed, I'm not going to say for young children, though, because it's different because they're growing faster. So it's not the same situation. But I think it's very important not just to get the vitamin D and the B12, but there's a K2 to make the vitamin D work properly. And I think there's obviously things like iodine and iron. And you've got to think about the DHA and the EPA. There's forms of the omega-3 that we don't readily make from plant material anymore. Now, it seems like we're supposed to be able to take the omega-3 fatty acids and plant material and convert them to EPA and DHA in our own bodies, but most people just can't do that. So that's part of the glitch situation. So if you can bring those supplements in, I think, there's a much greater possibility of it working. You've just got to be educated. You've just got to think it through and pay attention to what you're doing. And people, as we know, they'll be vegan. I think it's much more challenging for people, for raw food vegans, because they're not taking in, they're not eating processed foods that might be fortified with vitamins that you'd normally get from animal products. So although I'm a great advocate of raw food, I'd still say raw veganism is a lot more of a challenging path than straight veganism. But I think you can make it work.
I was speaking to a doctor who runs cancer clinics, and I was asking him about veganism, vegetarianism, and so on. And he said to me that he can spot a vegetarian in the ward because they're so weak.
Yeah, well, I know exactly. I've been told something similar by dentists. They say it's just a simple fact that vegetarian and vegans have worse teeth, and I think they're just reporting from the field, and we should take notice. And what I feel is about if you're going to be vegetarian or vegan, you've got to think through why people have eaten meat for so long. Even it might not be innate to us, but there's been a reason why it's become a survival food. And I noticed a lot of people who maybe start off as in my generation, the great idea was vegetarianism, not veganism. So and I knew so many people who were vegetarian, and then when they were older, they became meat eaters. And from a biological point of view, I could see some of the reasons. For example, CoQ10, that we don't make so much of it. We don't really make so much of it for ourselves, past our 30s. And the only real substantial source is organ meat, so at least meat or fish. So if you're not going to eat those things, you're going to need to think about supplementing it. So we don't know the half of it yet, but I just think rather than just, I prefer to just think about, well, what are our ideals, but what is the reality of our situation? So I think, I don't know if we can cover it all by supplementing. I'd like to think so. Because it's very, eating meat has its own challenges, doesn't it? It's much more difficult for us to digest. I think it's just we're in a compromised situation, and there's no one right answer. And the aim of my book is not to point. I'm not trying to make some moral point in any way. It's just to say what are our choices and what is optimal for us, and help people find a way, in an informed way, to make their own choices based on their own situation and their own ethics. So. Yeah, I think there's a reason. Look at the human story, and when we left our ideal biological environment, we adopted various survival strategies. But some of them have cost us, But we did them to survive. So it's just, and then it becomes a really interesting story, that we're now, and part of our role as humans now is to create a story from here. And it's very easy to get caught up in the negativity of the world and the conspiracy stuff and stuff. Although I suspect most of it is true. The important thing, though, is that we take this scenario and remember to create a narrative that's pleasing to us, but also is in harmony with the grander scheme of things, in terms of, I like to talk about connecting to the life force. I think that's remember, the life force is stronger than any other force. Any dark force or any malignant force, the life force is stronger than it. If we can connect with the life force and bring our stories from there, then we can be happy through all this, all these challenging times.
Well, quite so. And getting back to the food thing, how about lunch?
Lunch? Well, you've got me a bit challenged here, Clive, because I think since I've been sort of eating this way, I don't really think much in terms of meal times, I have to admit. But you're right to bring me back to that point. So to me, what I'd call a main meal of the day, which tends to be later than the official lunchtime for us, but it could be lunchtime. It's really important to have a big salad every day. For lots of reasons. It's for the nutrition in the food and the fibre in it, and lots of greens, usual sort of salad vegetables, maybe some grated root vegetables thrown in there, some fermented vegetables, things like olives, avocado, all those kinds of things. Could be some raw dairy produce in, if you're into that kind of thing. But definitely every day try to get a big salad in.
What's your feeling about eggs?
So I was just going to mention that. I thought you'd say that. You know what? I think they're such an obvious food. A lot of people are repelled by them. But, in terms of the nutrition that's in them, and, especially thinking about the vegan thing, like people are concerned about animal welfare, genuinely free range eggs, where the hens can genuinely freely roam and find their own food and have a life that's worth living. I just think it's just such an obvious thing to include, but I think it's probably just not a lot of them. What's your feeling about them?
I'm the same as you in that if the chickens are scratching around and they're eating the bugs and they're eating grit and they're having a nice life, I think eggs are the best food in the world almost.
Mm.
As far as, if somebody's got dementia or something, you
Yeah,
want to rebuild their brain, well, soft boiled eggs,
yeah,
amazing brain
yeah.
rebuilder.
Yeah, the thing is they've got everything in them.
Yeah,
They've got
exactly.
everything for the growing chicken, and they're not even fertilized generally. You're not even eating a baby chicken. It's just they're just left there. They're just such an obvious food answer to me, but a lot of people are really put off them for various reasons. And you can use, you can put raw egg yolks, and it's like the chocolate pudding recipe I was talking about. You could put a raw egg yolk in there. I used to do that for a long while because I had a failed vegan experiment years ago, and I had to rebuild afterwards, and that was one of the things I used was raw egg yolks. I think when they're very fresh, you see, we're not used to very fresh eggs, but very, very fresh eggs from truly free-range hens are a completely different thing to what some sort of eggs, because eggs can be sitting on the supermarket shelf for weeks.
Interestingly, you can take eggs that are up to 21 days old, put them under a chicken, and they will hatch.
Wow.
So if you think about it, ducks and chickens and so on, they lay loads of eggs, then they gather them all together and sit on the lot. So that actually eggs are still fresh right
Well,
until
that's
that.
interesting, because they taste different to me when they're fresh from the hen. But yeah, but aren't a lot of eggs that you buy, they're not fertilised, are they?
No. So yeah.
That's the same situation.
I'm having to think about that, and that may be the issue actually.
Perhaps that's it. If they're not fertilised, then they're not living in the same way. There's a whole new topic now to research. The real story about eggs.
I used to keep chickens and ducks and geese, and they were so intelligent. I felt totally happy eating the eggs. They had more than they needed. The land being supported if they'd all been hatched.
Exactly.
I couldn't have killed one though. I had 2 geese, and the geese were incredible. When I came outside, if I made the mistake of sitting down for a minute, one goose would sit on one of my feet and the other goose would sit on the other, so that I wouldn't move. They just wanted to be stroked and petted, and they were reasonably happy. They're quite heavy. That if I did get up and walk, I could walk with each goose on each foot.
Wow.
So, Holly, who would benefit from your book? Who is the target audience that's going to be just blown away by how well they feel?
Well, of course, initially my thing was, well, everybody would benefit from this. But I came to realise over a period of time that not everybody even wants to do all these things. A lot of people want to accept their lot, and they don't really want to even take supplements. They don't even want to even bother to, they don't have to make a salad. They just don't want to do these things. And so I realised that it's possibly a relatively small percentage of people, and it's self-selecting. This information will help anybody, everybody. So it's the people who are motivated, who really, really want to feel better, and who are willing to make the effort to do what it takes to feel amazing.
And what benefits? Let's say somebody is really quite ill. They're really unwell, and they've been eating a conventional diet up until now, and been living reasonably conventionally. How quickly do you think, if they adopted even some of the main part of your ideas, how quickly do you think they'd notice?
I think you can start to feel better within hours. But in terms of diet, the way of eating that I recommend, after about 3 days of it, it's like, oh wow. It's like, oh, I feel really quite differently. So, but then something happens, because when eating in this way and living this way makes you feel more aware. So your issues are going to come up. And that's the wall, isn't it? Because then you have to deal with your issues. Are you willing to do that? It's the same with all this stuff, isn't it? So, but it's like there's all the tools are there, you know. And I do consultations with people as well, so I can help people. I can help people work through this stuff, because there's so much more than this in the book. There's so many tools, you know, to work through all this stuff. But you know, basically anybody I've got to do the things they need to do after this book, they felt better. And all kinds of issues. I mean, it's how many issues are there? But once we start to get our neural systems functioning more the way they're designed to, everything is bound to feel different. You think about it in a car, you know, if you were putting the wrong fuel in your car and there was no oil in there, you know, and you know, the steering wheel's a bit, you know, would you take it for a drive? I mean, it'd just be suicidal. But yet every day we walk out the house with our neural systems that are all sort of not properly nourished and not properly honed, and you know, we've got them running our lives, you know, and it's like no wonder things go a bit weird. You know, so I've got a huge faith. I've got a huge faith in the new generations coming through, and I'm seeing that, you know, the young adults now, they're just, so many are just willing to go for it. But I think obviously at any age you can benefit, you know, right up to, you could be at, you know, the later part of life, even, you know, someone like, we know someone with Alzheimer's, someone with Parkinson's, they can start to regain their mental function. You can be brought back even at that stage. Because the thing is, this is a great hopeful message, we've all got our original DNA. We've all got the DNA that we had when we were 16 or 18. When you think about that, it's just so amazing. You know, it's just really the way it's being read. And so, you know, now we've got all the tools at our disposal. You know, we know about how adjusting our biochemistry and our hormonal levels. We've also got the great advance of, you know, telomerase activators. I talk about this in the book as well, so we can start to protect our DNA. Because in later in life, we're talking about the point where the DNA itself starts to unravel. But we can even deal with that problem now very, very easily, and it's affordable now. And then, you know, there's so many techniques for sort of rebuilding things that have gone wrong. So it's just three things really. It's rebuilding ourselves. It's getting our hormonal biochemical, our hormonal and biochemistry right, and it's about protecting our DNA. Three, sort of, you know, on the physical level. So anybody who really wants to rebuild their health. And the most important thing is how we feel, you know, and none of us have got perfect health and none of us have got perfect situations. But when we start to feel better and think in a way that's constructive, it doesn't even matter anymore. And that's the thing that excites me more. You know, it's people sometimes assume that I just want to live an enormous long length of time. And I don't know whether I'm going to or whether I'm not. But the main thing to me is our quality of life and how we actually feel and what we contribute, what we leave behind us. Because none of us know how long we're going to live. The important thing is that we feel alive now. You know, it's how we live. And this stuff makes you feel more alive. And anyone can benefit from it. I mean, I have a kind of target audience, which is practitioners, because I think any kind of therapist or practitioner, if they bring the knowledge about human origins and the sort of glitch that we're dealing with and how we can remedy it into their practice, they're really going to deepen their practice and make themselves more, they'll just make their practice more effective.
And aside from the food element of it, can you perhaps give the audience a couple of really useful things from the book so that they're going to be encouraged to go out and buy it?
Oh, well, I'm very proud of my chapter dealing with how we're designed to use our minds, because I think a lot of time as humans we easily get stuck into kind of analytical thinking, you know, because we're left hemisphere dominated. And this is part of the glitch. This is part of the glitch in the way the DNA is read, that we have these limited left hemispheres that have become dominant. So there's a list of techniques in there to stimulate our right hemispheres and calm our left hemispheres. And there's also some pointers about the way to focus our minds. How to actually, rather than focusing on problems and analysis, how we focus our minds on solutions and the things that make us happy. And when you read it, hopefully, my idea is that a lot of this stuff will sound self-evident, because that shows that it makes sense, but it still needs pointing out. And I want people, my hope is that when people pick up this book, and even just picking it up, they feel happier. And then when they open it and start to read bits of it, they just feel happier. My main hope is that it's a happy experience to open the book and read it. And just to do some of the simple recipes like the chocolate pudding and a huge salad and a smoothie, and to start focusing on what you really, really want, and start doing techniques that stimulate your right hemisphere and calm your left hemisphere. Your world could be revolutionized quite quickly.
Yes, quite. One thing I want to just pick up on, you mentioned Parkinson's, and of course people with Parkinson's, some the MS and several other issues, they're told by their doctors that it's incurable, but you've seen a reversal of Alzheimer's, as I have in Parkinson's. And so would you say that the diet alone is going to provide that?
It can do an awful lot to help. Something I saw recently is the use of ibogaine actually to treat Parkinson's. And I've met a Parkinson's patient who was unable to feed himself, and he was being in tiny amounts of ibogaine, and he'd got to the stage where he was able to take up his hobbies and interests again.
Oh, that's very interesting.
It didn't cure it, but it was managing it. He could function.
Very interesting. What about MS? Have you experienced that?
I've seen someone keep it at bay with huge doses of vitamin D, actually.
Oh, that's interesting. What 50,000 units a day or something? That's
something like that, yeah. And they looked high as a kite. They looked so happy, because I think they've got their diet so worked out. They're probably happier than a lot of people without MS. And I think this is the point. It's like we're never going to feel happy while we're focused on our problems.
I've noticed MS clients avoid the sun. A lot of them, they don't go out much, and I would say almost everybody with MS should have their vitamin D levels checked.
Yeah.
And it's important not just to supplement wildly, isn't it, with vitamin D? You want to make sure your levels are.
Well, I've said to you before, I'm not a specialist in particular diseases. What I really wanted to look into, what I've looked into, is the human predicament, the general human predicament, as applies to all of us. So along the way, of course, I've picked up a lot of knowledge about specific diseases and how they can be helped. But I'm not a nutritionist, and I'm not a medical practitioner, and I mean, not just that I'm not qualified, is I've not made it my business to know all the ins and outs of every ailment. And this is what I'm talking about. I'm really looking forward to referring people to you, because I think you know a lot more about specific issues. My thing is to look at the general predicament, this general feeling of ill ease that, as far as I know, every human feels, and we accept it as that's life. But it's not life. That's the human condition, the current human. It's not even the human condition. It's the current human condition, and that's my concern. Is that that feeling, that lack of ease that humans are feeling in general. Right from probably not long after childhood, it seems to kick in as childhood is left. There are upsets as children, things that happen that upset us. But I think this general feeling of maladjustment to life in general is something that happens at puberty, when all these hormonal changes happen. And that's my concern, and this feeling is increasing as far as I can tell. So it's the unhappiness, actually. For me, it's the unhappiness that I've really, the weird thing is that I never expected this to take me into food. So I've become, I got into food because I wanted to know how we could feel happy. So I probably know more about that than I do about diseases, but you can't.
I was going to say a lack of happiness is probably the biggest problem in the world right now, along with stress.
I agree, absolutely.
And with the young, it also seems a bit of a sense of hopelessness as well.
Yeah, I agree, and I feel an incredible sense of allegiance to the new adults coming through. Because I think it's very. We were talking about this earlier. I think it's very, very tricky. It's not quite clear how to proceed now. And and all these beautiful people, and what exactly are they supposed to do with what they've been given?
Yes, quite, and dumbed down compared to
exactly,
and they don't know it.
Yeah.
Now, so for people who want to get your book, which I'm sure they will, can you give the details of your website and where they can get it?
I'm selling. Actually, I've got 2 websites now, and I'm not selling to my food website because it's become against the law to sell information about nutrition on the same website as I'm selling foodstuffs. So it's been sold on my other website. So that my foodforconsciousness.co.uk website is where I'm selling all the foods and so forth. But I've got another website called edenicstates.com. That's EDENICSTATES.com. And my book is on there.
Well, very good. It is incredible that you can't give information on the same site that you sell food. I mean, it's just criminal.
Yeah, but given that the mental state humans are in, these are just the kind of things we'd expect to be happening. It's what we would expect, and that's the weirdness of it all. If we were living in paradise on earth, we wouldn't even need to be doing all this work because it would be sorted. We'd just be getting on with it. So yeah, and I think going back to the happiness thing is like when you sort of make that obvious connection between our levels of happiness and the build of our neural system, a lot of stuff starts to fall into place.
And if somebody wants to come to you for a consultation, do they get you through the website?
Same site, yeah, edenicstates.com.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I can give you. You can give my email address as well if you like.
Yeah, why not?
Or use the info@edenicstates.com for all this business. Yeah.
Well, very good. So, what's going to be your highlight for this coming year? Do you think?
Who knows? I'm kind of just launching myself into. I want to be talking to as many people as I can who are interested about my book and putting what's in there into practice. Also, I've got some amazing energy clearing products, as I mentioned to you, the GeoCleanse products. And yeah, I want to be helping people and reaching as many people as possible with this knowledge. I had to hide away for quite a long while to get this book written up. You're writing a book, you really, it's quite a slog. And now I've got it written up, I want to be out in the world and sharing it with as many people as possible and with people who can share it with others, which is why I'm particularly interested in talking to practitioners. So we'll see. I feel like we're jumping into the unknown. I think we've, for most people, 2016 was extremely challenging for all sorts of different reasons. And I'm hoping that, that we've cleared the way for, just much more expansive and brighter 2017.
Well, excellent. And, thank you so much for your time. Really much appreciated. And I wish you every success with the book and everything else.
Thank you, Clive. It's just, thank you for interviewing me.
My pleasure.
Okay.